Hello everybody, welcome to Combe Campers. Today we're going to see if we can get this bargain £150 engine running, ready for project Westfalia. I just want to take a moment to say thank you to our sponsors, Howden's Modified Van Insurance. That's right, A-Plan are now Howden's. They still do exactly the same in that they will insure your van from the time you buy it until you completely convert it into a camper van and beyond. And if you want an exclusive rate on your next policy, please mention Combe Campers and they will sort you out. So for those of you who don't know Volkswagen engines or air-cooled Volkswagen engines, what we have in front of us here is a 1600cc CT code engine from a very early Type 25 or T3 or Vanagon camper. We've dealt with lots of Type 25s, and one of my favourite engines, despite being the least powered, the lowest powered, is actually this 1600. I think it's a cool little reliable block. And I actually picked this up for only £150, the whole engine. And yes, it looks like absolute junk right now, but beneath all this dust and grime and everything else is a freshly painted tinware set. It's got restored heat exchangers, beautiful exhaust parts, everything else, but it's been sitting on an engine stand for 2 years, if not more. And today is the day we'll see if we can get it running. So before this video, we did actually attempt at having a go at the engine. You know, it was a Friday afternoon, we had an hour spare, we thought, let's get into it. But we quickly realized we needed more spares and we thought you guys wanted to see it too. So the setup we have right here is, this is actually an air-cooled Type 25 4-speed gearbox. And the only reason we're using it is because we need the starter motor to engage into the flywheel to then turn the engine and then hopefully start the motor itself. This again has been sitting on a shelf. I may use this in the future for some higher range final drive gears in the diff. But in reality, it's just junk parts. You know, you've seen the bay window on a previous video, you can check that link there if you don't know what the bay window is all about. And we're just trying to build it up with used parts, trying to do it for as cheaply as possible. And when I heard about this complete engine for £150, I had to have it, mainly because if I wanted a 1600cc upright engine, they're about £1,000 plus on the likes of Marketplace and eBay, wherever you're looking. So to get an engine for £150, do the work on it, I think that's going to be a bit of a bargain. The only problem is, this configuration that the engine is in right now, i.e. the pancake motor, won't directly bolt in. And it's a bit of an experiment here to see whether I can strip all of this tinware off and then build it up as an upright Type 1 engine and actually throw it in the bay and we can actually have it running. I will leave an image to an upright bay window engine about here to show what I would like this to look like. I've tried to do some research, or I've done some research on the internet. I've spoken to experts to see whether we can convert this into an upright engine, and it is possible, I think, because the engine itself is based on a Type 1 case. So it's a bit of a peculiar beast, this being a Type 1 1600cc case, but with a pancake motor configuration, the flat motor. But being a Type 1, it should be able to fit in the bay. Well, it will fit in the bay, it's just whether we can get the tinware situation going on correctly. And with the host of spares I've been collecting behind me, I hope we can get that figured out. But for right now, let's just get us started, shall we? So we're not going to go too in depth with the mechanicals, but we are going to go through the steps of how to get an engine running if it's either been sitting, or the things you need to check out for if it's an unknown engine. And there's a few things you need to get an engine started or an engine running. That's basically fuel, air, and spark. The air and fuel are obviously going to need to be thrown into the engine via the carburetor. and then the spark is provided by a distributor and coil, and that's the problem we had the other day. This engine should normally have an ignition module and digital points effectively. So we've thrown in a points distributor and a coil, and they were just parts out of my store. You know, junk stuff that I've thrown in a box. So I went sifting through the parts and we just couldn't get spark properly. So what I've done is robbed the parts off my 1200cc Beetle engine that is currently at home having the engine cleaned and everything else. And if you want to check out those videos, we've been covering the 1972 Beetle resto or preservation at home in my garage, and we do live videos on that every Sunday, and you can check out the playlist for those right about here as well. So I know I've got a good distributor, I know I've got a good coil. We just need to start putting things in this engine bay. We need to start putting things on this engine to see if they'll work on this configuration. If it's an unknown engine or an unknown car and you're trying to start it, one of the main things you need to do initially is to see if the engine turns. You can do that by either getting a socket on the front pulley, or if it's got a visible belt, much like in an upright Beetle engine, you could actually try and tug on the belt and see if the engine turns. We know this engine turns already, and we've actually had it turning via the starter motor as well. So we know that's good, and we wanted to check the oil as well. So let me go and get a rag and we can check the oil and go from there. This is quite funny. So, one of the things I was going to talk to you about is the timing mark on the front of the engine. We've just checked the oil, we've just checked the engine can rotate, and I wanted to talk about getting the timing correct, or at least finding top dead center of the engine. So, and that is an initial timing mark. And then I remembered I had this book in my drawer full of manuals that barely ever get touched, but this could be actually quite perfect. It's a transporter manual from Autodata. I don't even know the date. This would be quite funny to see, but it refers to transporters between 67 and 82. So this would be perfect. I'd love to find a date on this. Maybe we can find one later. But as I was flicking through the book, hang on, is there a date? Nope. Oh, 1984. So this book's nearly as old as me. In the book, there is a great guide, so this can help you and I with this video. Breakdown and non-start hints, which has got some great diagrams, but then also a wonderful little flow diagram. I guess that's what you call them. And we can tick these off as we go. So let's do this. Let's follow this guide. Give me a guide and you a guide. Be nice and easy to check. So the engine will not start, we know that right now. First on the list, starter will turn engine. Let's do that first. So I have a good starter battery with me, and just to confirm that, we have 12.35 volts on that battery. This has been barely used, it's actually come out of another vehicle, so I know it's good. We have the ground or earth, whichever you would like to call it, or whichever you refer to it most as, actually clipped onto the gearbox ground, and as long as that is all good, we should see, if I do a continuity test, brilliant. I know I've got continuity throughout, however, if I don't think the continuity between this ground point and the engine is good enough, I can always move this lead. And then between those two leads as well, if I go back to voltage, which is the V on your multimeter, there you go, 12.35, and that's me touching this lead and this lead here. So we know it's good. Now, to be able to bump a starter on without an ignition key, you've got this terminal here, which is the live to the starter solenoid. Once you bridge this point here and this point here with something like a screwdriver or even another wire, then this will fire the solenoid fire the gear. The solenoid will fire the gear from the starter motor onto the flywheel and then subsequently turn the engine. So we'll give that a go. Expect a spark. There we go. That made me jump. So you just heard the solenoid firing then. So if I give that another go and hold it, we should be turning the engine right now. There we go. So the engine turns. I know for a fact it's got pretty good compression as well, because as I'm turning, you can feel, as I was turning the engine with the ratchet, I could feel each cylinder having its compression. And by the sound of it, actually sounds like it's got good compression. Pretty good. Sounds like it's got good compression on all 4 cylinders there as well, which is good. So we know the engine turns. Shall we refer back to our book? Oh, by the way, if you're wondering about all the stuff behind me, if I haven't mentioned already, that's all of the spares we've got with us. It's basically stuff out of my garage at home where I store some extra bits and pieces and some spares from my Beetle. If they're not used on this project or they're not used on my Beetle project at home, I'm actually going to get rid of it all. I'm going to Slough swap meet next week, so look forward to that. Right, so let's get back to our page. We need to know now if we've got spark from coil. So to do that, we need to apply voltage elsewhere on this engine. For that, I'm going to need a coil and I'm going to need a distributor as well. So this was the original coil that came from this engine. It doesn't have manual points as such. It would have electronic ignition, and then on the side of the engine bay, when this was in the vehicle, it would have an ignition module as well, which would tell this distributor when to spark, and then as the rotor spins, it will send spark to each of the spark plugs in the engine. So we can't use this because we don't have the ignition module. So we're going to go back to analog points. Ah, there's my dog. You going home? Come here. Good boy. Good boy. You off? So we're going to ditch that. We don't need that. We're going to go back to just a regular points distributor. And if I open this one up, you'll be able to see the difference. So we have manual points in this one, and we have the digital points in this one here. This one in particular is the same as this. However, I have no confirmation that works. It didn't seem to work for us the other day. So I will go with a known one. So I just need to undo this point here and slide it right out. So point to note as well, if you notice the tabs on the base of the distributor are offset. They're not dead in the center of that ring, and they match up with the notches or the depressions on the inside of the distributor gear in here. So you need to make sure you get that right. She's being a bugger to get in because that seal's quite swollen. So for the purpose of this video, I'm actually going to be removing this little rubber O-ring here. This O-ring in a running vehicle is designed to stop oil coming back out of that port. But this one seems old and quite swollen, and it's stopping me put the distributor in for the purpose of this video. So I'll leave that safely to one side. And hopefully that should drop right in now. But when it comes to actually building this engine with the right parts, I'll make sure that seal goes in. Can't go all the way home. Go all the way home. There we go. There you go. So that's slotted in there nicely. I felt the clunk go all the way down. Right, so the distributor's in. I'm now going to get the coil, and then I will wire this system up correctly in the correct firing order on the cap, as if it was in an engine bay. So first we're going to check the primary windings. Now this multimeter is automatic, but if you don't have an automatic multimeter, you want to set it onto ohms, which is the little horseshoe shaped logo, and you want to set it to about 20,000 ohms, because on the primary windings you're looking for a resistance, or a steady resistance under 5 ohms. So I'm going to be putting my positive on the positive and negative on the negative. And I have a steady reading of 3.3 there, so it's under 5 and it's steady, and that's what I'm after for the primary windings. Next, we're going to test the secondary windings, and we are looking to put our positive terminal, sorry, our positive lead on the positive terminal and our negative lead on the output side. This is where your coil lead goes. And the multimeter, yes, this is an automatic, but if you've got a regular or a settable multimeter, you want to turn this dial to resistance, again the horseshoe, and you want to put it to around 20,000 ohms, because what we're looking for is over 5,000 ohms and under 20,000, and it be a steady reading. And there we go, that is 8,800 ohms, and it's nice and steady there. That's a good coil. Onto the wiring then, and namely right now is the ignition leads. I've just taken 2 of the leads off the engine we're playing with, and they're rock hard, and they're sort of keeping their shape and everything. So they've obviously been on there a while, so we can ditch those. These are the leads off the Project Beetle. And what I'm going to be doing now is connecting the coil to the distributor. And what you've got to make sure of actually are the pins in your coil, your pins on either the coil or the distributor. So if you have a look in the inside of this distributor, it's got sort of nipples on there, and they have, where's my lead? They have this type of end on, which will fit on there. And then this type of lead has the open-ended style, and they will go into this type of distributor. So make sure you get your leads right, because that could get you unstuck. Don't need that either. So with the shortest lead we have, I'm going to be connecting the coil to the distributor. Lead number 1, that's all the way home, and then I'm going to be going round the firing order. Now I don't quite know the orientation of this yet, we have to find top dead center, but I am going to be wiring them up in an orientation of 1, 4, 3, 2. So you've got on the engine cylinders 1, 2, 3, 4, but the actual firing order coming off the coil is 1, 4, 3, 2. 1, 4, 3, 2. So that's how we're going to wire up the distributor now. So although I've gone and put the leads on into the area where I think it was, I do want to just confirm where top dead center is. And that top dead center on one of these engines is when cylinder number 1 is at the top of the cylinder when the, top of the cylinder when the piston is on its compression stroke. So to do that, we are going to remove this cover once again, get our socket on the front of the pulley there, remove number 1 spark plug so we can inspect when the piston reaches the top of cylinder number 1. There you come. And well, there's a couple of ways you can do it. You can check the timing mark on the pulley with its reference to this pulley cover. Now, I'm not entirely sure why, but there's only one timing mark, so to speak, and I don't want to trust that that is top dead center. So what we're going to do is actually manually check when the cylinders are, when the piston's at the top of the cylinder versus the mark which is on the pulley, and I'll go and do that now. There's actually 2 points in the rotation when that timing mark, and it's just pinged back over this point here. This timing mark needs to be about here. And what we need to do is ensure that it's at top dead center when that timing mark is about here. If it's up around the top and that piston is not at top dead center, then there's a good chance you're 180 degrees out. So if I grab a torch real quick, I'll be able to see the piston. This is just a pick tool. So it looks to me like the piston, and we can take you around there in a second, it looks to me like the piston is about halfway down the cylinder. And if you watch the handle of this pick tool here, you'll be able to see that moving when I rotate the engine. So that's now dropped because the cylinder's moving, sorry, the piston's moving down the cylinder. You'll be able to see that come back up in a second on this engine. Here we go. So that's started to go back up. And there we go. My timing mark down here on the pulley is near where I want it to be, about there. And the tool is sticking out quite far, and if I get the torch in there, I'll have another look. That cylinder looks, sorry, the piston looks very high in the cylinder. So what I'm looking for here is this timing mark there, and whether this tool, if I rotate the engine now clockwise, whether this starts going up or down. So that started to go down the further I turn it around, if you can see that. And if I turn the engine back the other way, that started to go back down there again. So I need to find the sweet spot in which the piston is coming all the way out to the top, and then it has a part of the rotation where the piston is static at the top of the cylinder. So feeling for it now. So that's going back down because I was reversing the rotation, going clockwise. That feels at its highest. If I keep rotating and the timing mark's lining up, if I keep rotating, that's staying still, and now it's started to go back down again. Go back the other way. Just went up a touch there, and that is about TDC, I would say. So that timing mark is pretty much where I want it to be. Let's double check on this guard. There we go, it is just before top, or what, this timing mark here, but the piston is at the top. So maybe this is 5 degrees or 7 degrees past top dead center, or you need the timing mark to be before top dead center, vice versa. We shall figure that out. So I'm going to take the tool out now, pop the spark plug back in. So leads on, spark plugs in. We think, or from what we know, the engine is now at top dead center. Now I'm going to remove the distributor cap to see where the rotor is pointing right now. And see if we've got our #1 spark plug lead in the right place. No, we are entirely in the other direction. Huh. Okay. Well, let's try it at that then. Let's try it at that. This rotor is there, so I need to now put the cap back on. And where we need #1 to be is right here. So that mark is pointing just about here. That matches up with #3. So all of the leads need to go round 2. So #1, #4, #3, #2. There's a 1, 4, 3, 2. The spark plug's pointing in the right direction, or the rotor, sorry, is pointing in the right direction. And I'm going to just tighten that up so the distributor doesn't move. So we've got the distributor in, the coil on, the coil's wired to the distributor. Now we need to apply voltage to the coil and see if we're getting spark at the spark plug. And if we're not, that could be down to anything. That could be down to points, could be down to the coil faulty, could be down to the distributor point faulty. But what we're going to do now is temporarily wire the engine so the parts of the operation that are needed to operate when we're effectively turning the key. So if you need help with a wiring diagram, I recommend, a wiring diagram with older VW engines, for example, I recommend the Samba.com. If you have an older vehicle, they have got excellent wiring diagrams, and we're just looking them up here. But effectively, all we need for this engine to run, if I'm having a look at this diagram, is an ignition live to the coil, and that's it. Now, supplementary to that, from the ignition coil, you will have a live run to the fuel solenoid or the cut-off solenoid on the carburetor, which we'll probably wire in as well once we start feeding this fuel. And then also you can wire in a live to the electronic choke as well. This doesn't have a choke with a cable, has an electronic choke which is just there, and right down here is the fuel cut-off solenoid as well. So there's a couple of things you can do. You can test the fuel cut-off solenoid with just a ignition live or just a live terminal to the battery. So I'm just going to wire this up now, and then we can start doing some real tests, make some noise, hopefully. So, engine is wired up to what we need to, really, and like I said, all we need is a live to the coil, and the live from the coil is going to this fuel solenoid. And if I touch this here, you'll be able to hear that fuel solenoid clicking on and off. Hear that? So once that opens, that will allow the fuel to pass through the carburetor. It's a safety switch, effectively. Now what we're going to do is be testing for spark, and I have this, which is a spark tester. It's effectively a spark plug lead with a little bulb inside. So when you connect it to your spark plug and to your ignition lead, and then crank the engine, you should see that light up yellow. So with a bit of luck, let's see if this works. I'm going to pop that on there. Now I'm kind of having to jerry-rig this a little bit because the ends of the spark plug and the ends of the spark plug leads don't necessarily fit this, but they should work for what we're doing. Right, so I have live to the starter. I now have live to the coil, which is that. And then if I bump the starter, turn it over, we should see spark right there, or at least a yellow bulb flashing. Ready? Yes. Did you see it? That was flashing right there. So hopefully, now we have spark. I pull that off. So I guess all that's left is now is to put some fuel down it, see if it actually fires. That'll be a relief, because this thing seems to be fighting me every part of the way. I've not really shown that on camera, but everything we touch at the moment seems to be pulling apart or breaking, because effectively it's all used stuff. But for the purpose of what we're doing here, let's hope this works. Right, so I have some fuel in a can, but some fuel in this squeezy bottle. I'm going to fill it up with a touch more. And what I'm going to be doing is filling the carburetor up, just the float bowl of the carburetor. Yeah, I'll be filling the float of the carburetor up through the vent hole. So this is the float bowl here. And there's like a vent hole in the top. I'm just going to be literally filling the bowl up here. I'm going to put a little bit down the carb as well. Am I getting any? Yep, I can see the accelerator pump working there. It was actually squirting fuel into it, so that's a good start. There's a channel that I watch, it's called Vice Grip Garage, and every time he starts a motor he says, "Bring the thunder." So this is what we're going to do now. Bring the thunder. You ready? Let's connect the live up to the battery and say that again. Here we go. Bring the thunder. Oh, we had a bit of blowback come out the carb then, so something fired. Maybe it's 180 degrees out. We'll double check. You ready? Bring the thunder. Yeah! Yes! That sounded pretty healthy. So there we go. Used parts. Just very simple wiring to get it started. Checking for spark, check for oil, check for timing. Fired straight off. I'm actually really happy with that. We did it. We did it. Should we do it again? Hang on. Bring the thunder. I'd call that a win. So there we have it. A bargain 150 pound engine with just a little bit of work and some used parts. We managed to bring the thunder and get that fired up straight away. Super happy with it. So now I guess we're gonna have to strip this down of all the tinware just to a long block and then see if we can turn this into the 1600cc upright engine we want to put in the bay window.